Luke anything. These are my dear friends and cohorts. Vic Wheeler. Say hi, Vic.
Hey y'all, howdy
And I
from
saw
Austin, Texas.
Okay, excellent. We got two Texans here. And the one and only Antonio Herbert. Want to introduce yourself, Antonio?
Good morning. Yes, good morning, and thank you so much for being here today. I'm actually part-time real estate agent too, so I'm actually at a house getting pictures done, but I'm very thankful that I could make it and be a part of this opportunity to have a fireside chat with Luke.
There we go. So this is, yeah, I'm sorry. As we see the beta phase here, I'm not technically always the most happening, but here we go.
Yeah,
Is that good?
so
Good.
you're currently oriented, so we would have to look like this. So you might have to
Here,
turn your
let
camera
me.
in this direction.
There we go. How's that?
We're oriented up now.
Good, good. I can fix flutes. I can't fix iPhones. Armand
And we're
Haynes,
thankful.
Hales is here, my main man. I'm really excited to
Wow.
have everybody come along board. And so, like I said, this is our first iteration of this. Antonio and Vic have more experience on this platform than me. So, could you tell me, guys, if people want to join the conversation, do they just press the video button and they'll come right in as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you see on the bottom of the screen, you're going to see these icons, and they'll there's a video camera button, and you can press that, and that'll let us see your pretty face. If you want to stay anonymous, or that's fine as well. So first off, I guess I'll ask you guys: do you have any questions, Antonio or Vic, you might want to ask?
I have a short list actually. It's growing by the minute. So
I
I
have the
feel
yeah,
well,
I
I
have
was
the
just gonna
list as well.
say,
I think
first question
yeah.
is I had a question that is kind of almost the same as the one that Rosalind Stack said. I was saying, so what are pads actually made out of? Synthetic versus whatever. And Rosalind says, which pads are really the best for a professional flute?
Okay, well, that's a multifaceted question, I guess. What we call traditional pads is just there's two types. There's a woven pad, and then there's a pressed pad, and those are the pads from Bohm onto like maybe 1990, maybe. And a lot of the older players still claim that those are the ones for that. On the vintage flutes, which I disagree actually on, but there's a warmth and sound to those kind of pads. Those are wrapped in. I remember you saying something about fish skin. It's not fish skin. It's actually the intestinal lining of either a pig or a cow, and I think it's a pig. And then that's wrapped around on a traditional pad. That's wrapped around a piece of cardboard, and then you see. You think I have a pad right next to me, and then they take that skin and they pull it really taut so it goes around the wool and it sticks to the back of the cardboard piece with like mucilage or some kind of glue. So that's what they call a traditional pad. A contemporary pad is funny because they call it contemporary. There's not contemporary at all. It's like 1990, but we're still calling them contemporary. I guess there's different ways to differentiate them, I guess. So, Straubinger pads or Pisoni S2 pads are the um, kind of the benchmark of high-end flutes now. If you have a flute that you bought in the last 20 years, it's a high-end instrument, you're going to have a Straubinger pad. And what that is a Delrin, which is like a rubber or plastic. I think it's a rubber. And they mill it down to make like a dish. They use a CNC machine, so it's super accurate. Do I help him here? I have all my stuff packed up. So here's one. There's like two systems to it. So here's what they call this is called a stabilizer. and that's like his Delron little disc, and we glue that to the inside of the bottom of the cup. And then a Straubinger pad looks like this. Many of you may know they look very flat. This pad's used, so I'm gonna tear it apart. They're like $7, $8 a pad, so I'm not gonna tear apart a new one. So just like the traditional pads, it's covered in a skin or you know, intestinal lining. So you see that? That's on all your pads, and they rip that. They bring that back, and they use like stickers. Straubinger uses a sticker, so they use a sticker on the back to make sure it's really flat. And then you can see there's a piece of microfiber right there, and then there's a shell, a Delron shell. So that becomes a very accurate system. So this goes like this with the skin on it, and then we'll have a glued-in stabilizer. So that'll come like a sandwich like this, and then we use shims to make it sit perfectly with under a half a thousandth of an inch. And then we have different styles of. This is a Miles Zentner pad for piccolo, and you can see that that's got a cork on the bottom. There's a little teeny piece of felt there, and that's wrapped around a cork. So there's this straight up cork pads. This is for piccolo. Jim Schmidt makes what's called a gold pad, and that's essentially the same kind of situation as a Straubinger pad, though it's instead of using an organic wrap, it's wrapped in mylar, which is also a plastic, kind of a plastic base, and then they use like a gold leaf where the microfiber would be, and he uses metal also on the bottom, and it has like rings that come around the sides. They're actually very. I mean, he's a brilliant person. And he's brilliant at making pads. Those pads are really hard to install, and I actually won't even install them unless it's a certain flute. If it's a Brandon Brothers or Nagahara or like a Muramatsu, I'll do it on those. But certain flutes, it just doesn't work because they're so flat. Let me see. Am I missing something? There's Valentino pads, and Valentino pads are greenbacks, they call them sometimes, and those are kind of like a spongy, like if you're gonna go scuba diving, that kind of feel. And this is a Pisoni S2, like I told you about. This is essentially the same thing as a Straubinger. Once Straubinger lost its patent, surprisingly, it seems like only one company really went after that design. And then I know Burkhart and Brannon are using those exclusively now. Let me think, is there any other pads? I created a pad too that's kind of a hybrid pad, panella pad, which is it's like a thin layer of pressed wool felt, and then a thin layer of cork, and then a thin layer of cardboard. And this is to kind of make it a little harder landing. That's the other thing you want to think about with a pad is the way it hits a tone hole, kind of pops, whereas like a felt pad kind of smushes a little bit. Um, don't get me wrong, I love felt pads. I pad felt pads all day. Um, Felt padding and Straubinger padding are two different skill sets. A lot of the younger people probably don't even really know how to pad felts just because they're traditional, even though, like I said before, the tradition is a long time ago. um, so yeah, like I said, I'm sure I'm missing probably a pad or two in there. But that's pretty much the spectrum. As far as being better or worse, I don't think that there's really. I mean, like I said, certain situations, if you had an old Louis Lott wooden flute, you wouldn't want to use Straubinger pads on them because the tone holes would be wildly not flat. Um, on something like that, I'll generally use a felt pad or my pad or even a Valentino pad. I had a guy in New York once who said no one could ever get his wooden Haynes to work. And then I used one of those Valentino greenback pads and I set it up like that and it was honking like crazy. So there's a few things, and you have to have the right flute for the right style pad. And then it comes down to just playing flutes and seeing what works best for you. and what sound is in your head to make it feel the best. One of my ethos is when people ask me about flutes is to try flutes. If you can go to New York, go to Flute Center. If you can go to Durham, North Carolina, see my friend Jeff Smith. There's so many dealers now. Robert Johnson, Flutistry, Carolyn Nessbaum, and just like, you know, we used to say when I was a dealer, we call it like POB, Powell on the brain, or like HOB, Haynes on the brain. Like people think that they get this conception of what flute they want, and then go down the rabbit hole on that. So I think the best thing is just to stay open, keep your ears open, your brain open, your mind open, and see what works best for you. When you get to about when you get to a handmade flute, you're going to be in the $10,000 range, and past that range, pretty much everything's going to be good flute. And then it's just about being a different flute or a different situation. Does that answer your question, Vic?
Well, I'm sure you could talk about it all day. I'm curious. I see we have a couple of other people tuning in. I'm curious what other questions are floating around in your brains.
Looks like, and I don't want to mispronounce it. Is it German or German? How do you pronounce it?
Herman?
Herman. Herman has a question. He says, "Do you know if I have a P cut or an N cut? Maybe Z cut. Don't remember the head joint. So, do you know if
On his DeVoe flute?
see what he says in the chat? Herman, is that on your Devo? The 69.
69,000. There's not going to have. If I'm thinking, I know this is one of my clients, and he has a DeVoe more modern Haynes. So DeVoe, William DeVoe was the foreman of Haynes. Um, I don't know, probably like the mid 60s, 70s, maybe to the 90s, 2000s. And they actually had a type of flute called the DeVoe scale, and I think that they started to use the different names of head joints once it got to DeVoe. 69,000 Haynes is going to be like, let me see, 670, 50s, probably like 1968, something like that. And they didn't really, I don't think they offered like names of head joints back then. They might have offered you like a French embouchure hole and a modern embouchure hole. But I'm not really sure if that was even the case because I haven't really noticed that. So essentially, like a French cut, and that's what all these are. Burkhardt has like M. Um, they have everybody. Yamaha's got Z's, A's. I don't know why they like the letters, but the P cut means Piedmont cut. That's where Haynes was for many years. I actually had the I guess what ability or whatever. That's not the word. The honor of working there for a few years when I was young in that building, and it was incredible. It was on like a cobblestone street in Boston with gas lights and everything. Um, so long story long, no, it's probably just a Haynes head joint. But now what we do is like a French cut's like more of an oval shape, and a modern cut's more of a square shape. And then there's all kinds of different iterations of what those can be adjusted to and what that causes your flute sound to respond to. Any other
There's
questions there?
Yeah, there's another one from Jill Greer and Jill Gear, and she says, "Hi Luke, would love to know how you got into the flute repair maintenance business. What's your origin story?"
Oh yeah, thanks for asking. I went to college, to Berklee College of Music, and when I got to Berkeley, I didn't even play the flute. But my father's a great doubler. He played the flute really well, and so I had people around me who can kind of lead me in the direction quicker. Actually, one of our members on Flute Forum, who's very active, her name's Wendy Rolfe, and she's really kind of she was my first flute teacher. So that being said, I was getting gigs as a touring musician. So I would go out of school and I'd come back to school and then I'd go out of school. I think I might have done it 3 or 4 times. And like I said, my dad was a musician. He understood that happens, and everybody was cool with that. But then I came back from a long tour and I started realizing how much money I owed to Berkeley. I got a scholarship, but I forgot about living expenses and things like that. So I started teaching and I had 16 students a week and I was going back to school part-time. And then I was practicing and shedding for all these big gigs I was getting and playing a lot of wedding gigs. And I remember standing outside after 16 students teaching, and they were like, elementary schools sneezing on me and everything. So I was like, and when I was in high school, ironically enough, I worked in this place called Action Music and Sound, which was in Acton, Massachusetts. I had no idea that I was working like literally like half a mile from Powell, Burkhart. Haynes actually came. They're all in this area like Acton, Maynard. And I was a repairman when I was a senior in high school. So I thought I should say repairman, quote unquote, because I had no idea what I was doing. So I was looking at the newspaper of all things between teaching, and I saw that there was a opening for a finishing job at a flute company named Burkhart Flutes. I had no idea what Lillian's nothing. I just went there and said I know how to fix flutes, and Lillian actually interviewed me 3 times. That's how how fastidious she is about hiring really good employees. And so then I started working there. That was in 2005. I ended up not going back to school. I've never been asked for anything in my life for my diploma, whether it's a gig, teaching master classes at universities or whatever. So don't stay in school, kids. So that's the short story of it.
Great. So I see we have more people joining our live Ask Luke Anything. Um, we have another question coming in from anyone, or is it still just Jill Gear? I'm gonna get it right, Jill. And so thank you all for being here today. If you have a question, you can drop it in the chat. And otherwise, Vic might have some more questions on his list to provide to Luke, or Luke, you can go off of your list.
Vic and I's list might be the same list. I pulled off. Vic did a post in Flute Forum and asked if you could ask the flute tech anything, and there's so many questions. Is that what you had, Vic?
Yeah, we probably won't have time to get to all of them today, but the one I'm looking at right now from Ray Michaela says, what adjustments or fixes are reasonable for a player to do versus leaving it for a tech?
Yeah, I'll show you. So we playing flutes here. The problem with my studio is none of the flutes play. I gotta fix them.
Well, if you're
But
pressed, you probably will need to turn off the echo cancellation, just a warning. Just like with Zoom. It's in the sound settings.
I'm not gonna play much anyway. I'll just show you.
Okay.
Show you this. So here's a flute. If you're gonna do, I saw someone else. Let me see. Who was that? Asked me a question. That's kind of similar to this question. Someone was asking something about. I can't see it now. About adjustment screws on flutes. And I guess I always say the more you know, generally it's the word not good for you. But there's a few things that you can do if you're about to play a big concert and all of a sudden something happened like this. I can show you. It's better than I thought. Now I'm gonna do one little thing, and I'll show you what happens here. What do you think of that sound? So right there is just right under this trill post is a spring, and that spring popped out. So I think everybody should get a spring push. These are really, they're like, you know, you get it at JL Smith, Music Medic, Farees, and all I would have to do is just put that spring back in place, and then we'd be playing again. So that's an easy one if it just pops off. Someone else was asking about adjustment screws. Adjustment screws are generally now more of a student line, pre-professional kind of option. There are high-end, the Japanese for some reason have really kind of stuck with this system. Muramatsu does it, Sankyo does it, Miyazawa does it in a different way. I'm not sure if I think Arista, not Arista, Altus. I don't think Altus does. But anyway, so there's screws. They're called adjustment screws, and you'll see them like here's an adjustment screw. The little screws here. Sometimes they're on the front, sometimes they're on the back. And if you were to see if you were to press down your A key right here, and you see the key above it was like wildly not closing, you can see it kind of, which would also make the flute play like you wouldn't even be able to play it. You could have a precision screwdriver. I mean, I think the three things that everyone should have that could help them tremendously on a gig, high pressure gig, any gig, is like a precision screwdriver. This one's awesome. This has different. You can put like different types of blades in there. It has a magnet on it. Then just get some cigarette paper. I like this stuff called OCB. This OCB Ultimate. It's a half a thousandth of an inch, and your spring push. So what that does is it gives you the ability to adjust the screws. Sometimes what'll happen is the post will come out like on your C sharp, like right here. This is like a screw. This is a rod. So that rod goes through, and then there's a pivot point here, and it holds your left hand section in place. So if that gets loose, it's gonna throw off your whole left hand, and it's not gonna work. And the same goes for the trill keys. The foot joint doesn't really do it that much, but I guess that's the quickest answer I can give you. So, I mean, in the cigarette paper, what you do is you take the piece of paper, you cut the gummy part off. I don't have my scissors in front of me, but then you take that paper and you can kind of test and see if it's pulling or not. So on the A, you pull it, you play the B flat. See, that's a good adjustment. But if it was wildly out of adjustment, you would feel it just slip right out. This is a little light. And that's how we pad in general, is I'm pulling that cigarette paper throughout the pad from like 12, like a clock. You know, I'm pulling on each side of it to see how it's pushing against the tone hole. That's the end of my answer for that, I think. I don't know if I covered the whole thing. I got some other questions too on your post on Flute Forum, Vic. Let's see. Emily asked, soldered tone holes or drawn tone holes. So for those of you who know what that even means, is Haynes, one of my favorite flutes, was the first people to draw a tone hole. And this is a long time ago. It's probably 1920s or something. So a drawn tone hole is a tone hole that's pulled from the tube itself. And then it's generally rolled. At first, they just draw it out, and it's like a chimney. And a soldered tone hole is like a chimney on each tone hole that is soldered on individually. And sometimes those are called handmades versus commercial flutes. Like basically, you'll never see a soldered tone hole beginner flute. I mean, you might, but there's not very little of them. And then most flute companies give you the option of solder or drawn. I know Brandon Brothers just doesn't offer a drawn tone hole flute anymore. They used to have what's called the Millennium, but that's out of production. They might have started another one, but most high-end professional flute companies will give you the option of soldered or drawn. And a soldered tone hole flute or the handmade flute is always going to be more expensive because it's more labor intensive to make. They have to, they have to bind down each tone hole, solder each tone hole perfectly. And it changes the sound and it changes a few things. The soldered tone hole has much more um, material to make it so when you file the tone hole that you get it really flat. Whereas a drawn tone hole can be a little more, it's not as precise, although they're very precise now. And if you file a drawn tone hole too much, you can actually go through the tone hole because it's wrapped like this. But you have to not really not know what you're doing to do that. And a soldered tone hole can leak over time, like really vintage flutes. You can get solder leaks, and that's a real drag to figure that out. Actually, take like a popsicle stick, like tap the tone holes, and then if you hear what goes like snap, and then you know that it's up. So then I just resolder that tone hole. So most of the time, the companies will. I shouldn't say that, but maybe I should. The companies will say that the soldered or handmaids or the higher end flute, and the more expensive flute, but it's just different. When you add material to a flute, it's always going to be more resistant and it's going to be darker. And a lot of times I like to tell people, if you think of like a church bell, and a church bell that's really thin versus a church bell that's thick, it's going to take more energy to hit that thick bell. But when you hit the thick bell, there might be more overtones and more color to the sound. Um, Drawn tone hole is generally a more vibrant flute. It'll literally feel more vibrant in your hands. Um, so those are the only two major differences: is the weight, the material, and the way it's padded. You know, um, and then that always goes back to the ethos of me saying it's like the Harry Potter. Uh, the wand finds you, I think, or something like that. The flute finds you. You don't find the flute. Play lots of flutes, especially if you're paying 15, 20, $100,000. You want to play a lot of flutes.
Okay.
Any other?
So, yeah, in the chat, looks like we have a question from Herman. Easier to repair open G sharp or closed is what he's asking.
Uh, um, Open G sharp's a little easier because I don't have to take the section apart. It's almost exactly the same. I mean, it's the same thing, but on a G sharp like that we normally play, you have to take the G key off, and then you have to go under the G key and pull the steel out, and it's just a little longer. It's nothing about like technically, but I would rather do that or an open G sharp, just less work. Any other ones in the feed, Antonio?
Not yet, but just so you all know, and these chats with Luke are going to be happening weekly, and it's just an opportunity for you to come in, and it's no pressure. We're not selling anything. There's no hidden fees to be here. It's just an opportunity just to talk and do what Flute Forum has always done best, which is providing an open, common, curated space for people to not have to wait one time a year to meet to ask these questions. So feel free to drop your question in the chat, or all of you now have audio and video access. This is our first time using this platform, so we are we are working on all the details and the nuances of going live, but this is, thankfully, school has provided us a pretty safe and easy platform to do that with. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. um, Luke, I might have one question about just the timing of when you're going to get a COA done. One of the big things is sometimes you get the back to school wave, and so they come in early sometimes, and sometimes they don't. What would you if you're going to put out a PSA to the world, what would you say about getting your flute in time to you?
Well, I'd say if you want the quickest turnaround from Luke Pinella, send it to me in like August. Well, no, actually June or July. It seems that
I was gonna
people in
say
the
probably
summertime
February.
they go on vacation and then they just don't think about their flutes. And then August, September, October become crazy busy because everybody's going back to school and realizing their flutes aren't in working order. I do my repair queue differently than most people do. I don't know how people. I mean, I think because I work with a lot of really high-end professional musicians who need their flutes really quickly. But I just say like, get your flute to me, whether I'm in New York or I'm in Ohio, and it just goes in my queue. So if I'm really busy, it's gonna take a little longer. Excuse me. Than if I'm not super busy, but I'm kind of pretty much always super busy. So I generally just throw out the say 2 or 3 weeks on a COA and 3 or 4 weeks on a repad or overhaul. And like I said, I don't know how people. I know I mean, a lot of technicians. They'll be like, "I'm booked out till next year," and I just that would be stress. That would stress me out. And I don't know. I don't know how the people do it either. And also another thing I wanted to mention is people. You should really have your flutes serviced once a year. It's unbelievable how many. And I notice it a lot because I do more overhauls. Well, I think I do close to more overhauls than I do anything else. And I'll do an overhaul somebody's flute and they'll hit me up like 4 years later and be like, I need a servicing. And I'll be like, you probably should have came a year or 3 years earlier. And it's just like your car. You could be driving your car around and everything feels great and you have like a teaspoon left of oil in the tank, and then all of a sudden your car seized up. So it's the same thing. It's a you know, as a technician, all I want to do is have your flute play well, and all you want to do is have me make your flute play well. But just by the nature of the universe, it's an instrument. It's a piece. It's a working piece of mechanical, whatever. Like it's like a car. So preemptive maintenance is very important, to pull the pins, to re-oil everything. People get used to how they feel, how the flute feels when it starts to leak. Headjoint corks. I was in Manhattan for 13 years, so I had people who would they would come in all the time. So, the Broadway guys and stuff. And I would say even this is controversial. I know from NFA, but I don't care. Um, I think you should go every 6 months. You should have a new head joint cork, which some people think is crazy, but I just use my ears as a musician and my the way it feels as a technician because the cork is like right at the top of the flute. It's getting all this moisture coming into it, so it's expanding, it's contracting. And then when I make a head joint cork for any flute, is always customized to the flute. You make a taper so it fits in perfectly, and then it really makes the flute vibrate. If it's too tight, it'll make the flute not vibrate as much. If it's too loose, it'll make the flute feel woofy. So yeah, preemptive maintenance annually is like really important, and you should send it to me. No,
Excellent, Luke.
there's some. Go ahead.
We've got a question from Jenny Pullman, and just wanted to chime in and remind everybody, drop your questions in the chat if you have one. You don't have to turn your camera on. You don't have to go turn your audio on or anything like that. You can drop in the chat, and we'll read them out to Luke. The purpose of today is to ask Luke anything. So Jenny Pullman asked, "Can you share your in playtest and what you were looking for with each section of the playtest?"
Sure.
That's a good question.
My family makes fun of me for this, actually. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if you heard me say that across the room, but my sons, I have 3 sons, and my wife, they always laugh at me because they know when the flute's done because I always play the same thing. But this is what I do. This flute does need a COA, so it might not work totally perfectly. Oh yeah, let me turn this screw in. Okay, so I do this. Everything's done. I never play a flute before I work on it, and just because it's my time is so valuable, I know it's not good anyways. So, but when I'm done with it, I play this. That's not coming up. This is not coming up right here. I played the 1-on-1. Let me just fix this real quick. It'll take 2 seconds. This is just like what I said earlier. So those strings are sweet. I'll go. So this is what it sounds like in real time. And on that low B, I'm always trying to just press the B key, like with the rollers. This is a terrible design. I don't know why they've never changed it, but the low C sharp spatula always is pushed down just because people are pushing down when they're going there. So if you play the C with the roller, this one's an adjustment. But if I'm holding the C and I'm rolling to the B, that'll just die if it doesn't. If that low C to C sharp adjustment's not correct. So obviously I'm feeling the leaks itself, but the actual notes itself is like. That's it. So I'm checking this. I'm checking the B, the thumb, the B to the A, the thumb B flat to the B flat. I'm checking the 1-and-1 B flat. I'm checking the G keys. I'm checking the G sharp just to make. The only thing that would be with the G sharp would be laggy. Then I'm going down here, and I go G to F. I go G to F sharp. Then I'll go to middle F sharp. And then I isolate the F by playing the F sharp with this. So when I do that, I'm isolating the F. And then I play G to D. That's a good one. I used to say I detest the D-test when I worked for Jeff Weisman. And if you play this on your flute, I'm willing to bet you if it hasn't been serviced, it won't work. Just go really as light as possible. This one I already worked on a little bit as a Muramatsu. It almost doesn't Muramatsus play through anything. But essentially that's my family's worst melody of the day. And seeing that I have this Muramatsu, I wanted to mention too, there's another pad is called a Lotus pad, and that's proprietary to Muramatsu, and that's like a metal disc, kind of the similar, like I think it's a microfiber under the skin, and then they have like a metal spud, I guess it would be like where the screw goes into the cup. That's different. Nagahara has their own pads too. Nagahara's out of business actually, believe it or not. But it's kind of like a paper-based pad. So I forgot those earlier. So that's a good question, Jenny. Thank you. Or Jill, I'm sorry. Any other questions? We've gone over a bit here anyways. I have a whole list of questions that Vic put up a post and said, what would you ask me? So maybe next Monday we can get to some of these. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. We really are excited to expand to school and to expand to Instagram, expand to whatnot, just to be, to make the reach as large as possible. We're definitely going to hit 100,000 members this year, which is absolutely bonkers to me. And as the founder of Flute Forum, I started one-to-one. I started it, and one flute player came, and now we're at 100,000. So we want you guys to be the founding members, the forefathers and foremothers of school. Especially, we're really pushing school right now, and we decided to just take down the paywall. We have had this ethos of no ads, and at least on Meta for sure. And school I think is actually set up better than Flute Forum is, as far as like it's easy to work on, it's easy to deal with. And then we also are going to offer in some form or fashion. Antonio and I are on the phone every day for hours and hours, and with our other partner, Dave Monatini, kind of ideating what's going to happen in the future. But I think what will happen is we'll have tier systems on school. So, you can access school just like you access Flute Forum, but we're going to come up with different opportunities for the artists, you, to have ways to monetize your master classes or have opportunities to sell some of your gear. It's endless, really, what we can do, and that's where we'll start to put a pay tier in, maybe. But like I said, we're not really there yet as far as telling people exactly what we're going to do as far as that's concerned. But my goal and Antonio's goal is to try to keep as much content is free for you as we have over the past decade. And with that, I thank you, Vic. I thank you, Antonio. I thank you all for this. I think we're going to have fun doing this once a week.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's
guys.
excellent.
Thanks for being
Thank
a part
you.
of the conversation. Yeah. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Luke. See you next time.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time, everybody. Take care.